Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the reading stream. I am the Takanome, and welcome to my humble slices of the internet that is my Twitch and YouTube channels. How is everyone doing today? Hope that you're having a good day today, maybe even a good week, and if that hasn't been the case, or let's say maybe this has been a rather stressful first week of the year, hopefully this reading stream could be a bit of a bright spot to your day. Tonight, we are going to continue reading from the book Clockwork Twist, Book 11, Faith by Emily Thompson. Now, some of you may be wondering, who is Emily Thompson? Well, allow me the opportunity to read their bio to you. Emily Thompson is a non-binary author and artist originally from Northern California. Although they adore steampunk and all things Victoriana, they also write science fiction and fantasy. After studying film and animation in university, Emily changed to a Japanese language focus and studied in Tokyo. After receiving a language degree and spending a number of years abroad, they now live in Washington and spend most of their free time writing in coffee shops, painting, crocheting plushies, coding, and playing lots of cozy video games. And that is our author for the evening, which, by the way, oh, wait, no, I cannot see chat at the moment. Let's fix that. Where, oh, where? There you are. Now I can see chat. I thought there was something I was missing. What I wanted to say was, I'm not sure if the author can join us tonight for this reading stream, but if they are listening, once again, I cannot express how appreciative I am that I was given permission to read this series for the reading stream. And if you haven't read any of Emily Thompson's works before, consider giving them well, I was going to say a listen, but give them a read. Again, all authors on this channel, if you can, please consider supporting the author. As far as news for the channel, well, this is the first reading stream of the year. We have been doing the reading stream for 4 years. 2022, January is when I first started the reading stream. It is a little difficult to believe that it has been 4 years since I started this. And as I've said before, the reading stream is more of a hobby. It's something I enjoy doing. I enjoy reading stories for everybody, for those who want to tune in and listen. Speaking of stories and people who want to tune in, Thursday we started a new, I guess, a new program, if you will. Now we have the reading stream. We now have something I am still workshopping, but currently calling the Storycraft stream, SCS, if you will. But we had a few people stop by in the last stream as I took, honestly, a little over 2 hours to write a somewhat quick short story. We will do another one of those streams next Thursday, which I'm looking forward to. I already know which story I'm going to write, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you want to just hang out as I write a story, or you want to write a story along, or as one viewer or listener found out, if you make suggestions that I accept, then you can be credited in the book that these stories will eventually come out of. Other news for the channel. Let's see here. As far as I know of, I do not intend to take any breaks for reading stream for the foreseeable future. Things have been interesting on my side of the planet, if you will. But as far as I can tell, we will continue to have the reading stream for the rest of the month on Saturdays. Any other news? I cannot say that I have any news. Oh, no. Yes, I do. I do have one other thing. Now, this is not necessarily pertaining to this channel or the streams, but it is pertaining to me, particularly the Takonome. I believe I mentioned before that I want to find a way to share more of the stories that I have been writing, that I've written, so on and so forth. I am setting up a system. It is imperfect, but it is being set up where I can not only share the story, but I'm also creating and sharing audio formats of the stories as well. So the first one will be available on Ream or Ream Stories, if you will, January 15th. And let's take a moment here. Where I cannot spell. I'm getting a link here. There you are. At some point, I'm going to make a, what's the word I'm looking for? A little card or whatnot that actually has this link. I will try to make sure that they're available on my Twitch, YouTube channels as well. Just a link to where these stories are going to first show up. Now, for those who may not know, because I've known about Ream for about a year, because Miss Taco uses Ream, so I have an idea how it works. But the basic idea behind Ream is it is Patreon, but for writers. So, naturally, there's going to be a free tier and a quote unquote paid tier. Free tier, if you just want to read the story, it will be available to you to read. Should be available at no cost. And if it turns out there is a cost, then I need to fix that. However, the audio version of the story, it will be a tier's description. There's only one tier at the moment, and the cost is $3. So if you want to listen to the audio version, that is one way to do it. There will be a second way to do it, which is I may aim for the end of the month. Either the end of the month or the following month on the 15th. I have to decide. I will also put the audio version on YouTube for free. So if you want to listen to it when it comes out, that will be a paid subscription. But I will make sure that the audio version in its entirety is available on my YouTube channel a week or two afterwards, or 2 weeks to a month afterwards. I'll make sure it gets on the YouTube channel for free. Hopefully without ads. Let's see. I believe that is all of the news I have. I will say I am very excited, surprisingly, very excited to start sharing my writings and stories with people more. It has been a bit of a journey to get to this point. But we have our water next to us, which I'm going to take a drink of soon. We also have a new tea in a new teacup. Ashley, ooh, that is very hot. For Christmas slash Yule slash solstice slash New Year's, I got a gift from my sparkly friend. It is a new teacup, ceramic, and it has a little tea strainer, not so much built into it, but a component of this teacup has a strainer that you can insert in that will hold the tea, pour the hot water over it, and then you can let it steep, and then you could just take out that little insert when you're ready. So I think it's steeped long enough. This that is hot. Oh, that is very hot. We're going to let that cool just a little bit more before. Well, let's see. Oh, I think we're okay. That is a very hot ceramic, my goodness. But we will take a quick drink of water. Very well. So before we begin tonight's reading, we also have to do a recap. I don't think I'm missing anything else here. So, just a recap to where we are in the series as well as the book. For most of his life, Twist had been alone. Orphaned as a baby, he would eventually repair clocks in a quiet, cozy shop in London. Thanks to his sight, his supernatural ability, he could repair just about anything simply by touching it to find what is broken. Unfortunately, this worked with people, thus making it virtually impossible for him to make physical contact with others. His life changed when a young woman requested his help to mend the mythical Clockwork Princess. Since then, he has discovered new worlds and made powerful friends and allies along the way. With his sky pirate friend Jonas and his wonderful clockwork fiancée Mira by his side, the world is a little easier to manage. It is not all fun and games, though. Dangerous and ancient forces wish to see his demise and will do anything to make it come true. Through the use of spells and wit, Twist and his friends have managed to avoid their grim fates. Until now. Twist and his friends now risk their lives to free villagers from the forces of the Fae and break the barrier to allow in reinforcements. Using their collective magics and skills, they have had a smooth operation thus far. However, as Twist knows all too well, anything can happen. Set this down. All right, and that is our recap. So again, this is Clockwork Twist, Book 11, Faith by Emily Thompson. We are currently on page 163. Wish me luck with the voices and let's begin. Once it was clear that they could go ahead with their plan, Tasha, Nico, Kima, Jonas, Vane, and Rafe went out into the corridors in search of ciphers. They planned to incapacitate anyone they found and take their cloaks for disguises, and then Rafe would take them far away where they could cause no harm. Since neither were really men of violence, Twist and Poigon both decided to stay with Pamut while he ready to break the spell. Kima seemed encouraged by their presence and left with little convincing. Mira remained as well, as she couldn't be of much use when no one but Twist could hear her speak in her ghostly form. Pamut set to work at once, searching the magical supplies for the items he needed, while Twist, Mira, and Kima's father watched silently. You're Twist, right? Aren't you? Poigon asked suddenly, turning to him. At your service, Twist replied with an instinctive shallow bow. You're the one Pambut? I mean, you're the one Storm had dreams about. It was me and Jonas, but yes, Twist answered. Of course, all of that business about Storm having a sight was a lie. He had no sight. He was a satyr like those creatures. He added with a gesture to the closed door the three satyrs had guarded. He just used magic to walk through Jonas's dreams, the same as he used to make himself look like your grandson. But why? Poigon asked. Why Jonas? Why you? Twist let out a quiet sigh as his mind filled with a long and complicated answer to that question. Our sights are unique, Twist answered, trying to simplify things. They both come from the same Fae soul. The other Fae want their man back. They've been trying to kill Jonas and me for our entire lives to get that Fae to return home. But we never knew about it until recently. Storm was this particular Fae's servant, and he came to this world specifically to find us and bring his master home. But the only way for any satyr to come to Earth is by taking the place of a human child. Despite the convoluted nature of his explanation, Twist was confident that Polygon understood him. The man's expression darkened and turned grim as he watched his true grandson meddle with magic. That evil thing stole my grandson because he wanted to kill you? Twist's chest tightened as he began to see things from the other man's perspective. They can't find me or Jonas. We're hidden from them by powerful magic, and rather a lot of sacrifice, he added as he realized that it was true. Jonas had lost both of his parents to the Fae, and Twist had only survived by tremendous effort. Polygon looked back to Twist, his dark eyes stony. Are you going to kill them? Pay them back for what they've done? Twist looked away, suddenly aware of just how weak, selfish, and young he truly was. I don't know how. All I know is how to run from them and hide. Kima's father gave a low tone of obvious disappointment. If you ever learn how to kill them, then tell me if you can't do it yourself. Twist shivered as he realized that this was actually a familiar concept. Kima had turned to murder and revenge against Storm just as quickly as her father had against the Fae themselves. The cold ruthlessness that they both shared was foreign and unnerving to Twist. It seemed strange to him that Kima would accuse Jonas of teaching violence to Pamut when she had so clearly learned of it herself from her father. Mira's chilly touch startled Twist out of his black thoughts, drawing his attention to her face as she took his hand. She wore a thin smile over her worry. I like hiding, she said softly, even though Polygon couldn't hear her anyway. I think hiding is very smart. Revenge doesn't usually work out as easily as it did for Kima. Twist nodded to her as his height lightened instantly under her efforts. Hiding will also keep him alive much longer than any attempt of revenge might. Twist kept to himself while Pamud finished his work. Once he announced that he was ready, his grandfather asked him what he had done. Pamud began to explain, speaking easily of things that made little sense to the others in the room. Nonetheless, his grandfather listened and asked further questions, while the boy clearly enjoyed sharing his knowledge. The buzzing at the base of Twist's neck grew thicker and fuller, and then the door opened behind him, letting Jonas, Kima, Vane, and Rafe through. Jonas and Kima both wore sand-colored cloaks now, and Jonas handed another to Twist. Tosha and Nico are guarding the entrance to the village, Kima told them while Twist put his cloak on. They already have disguises. We're ready to go and free everyone. How are you doing with the magic? She asked Pamut. It's all set, Pamut announced proudly. I can snap it at any time you want. That was fast, Kima replied, which made Pamut seem all the more pleased. We think we got everyone here inside the cloud. Wrong person, apologies. We think we got everyone here inside the cloud, Jonas told Twist. Rafe took them all away someplace. We're pretty sure the other ciphers up at the village still don't know that anything's wrong yet, but the longer we wait, the more chance they'll notice something's up. Rafe is going to stay here with you, Kima told her son. If anything goes wrong, he can take you back to the Icarus. Pamut appeared to want to protest, but stopped himself. He looked to Jonas. If anything goes wrong, you'll have to fix it, Jonas offered the boy. We can't have you all tied up in a battle when we need you,
Right,
Pamut said with a nod.
of course. But how will I know when you want me to break the spell?
I don't know, Kima admitted. Any ideas? She asked the room. Count to 1,000 or something? Jonas offered with a shrug. Do you have something against watches? Twist asked him, pulling his own pocket watch out and gesturing to it. Jonas laughed in surprise. Too much planning. My head's getting all mushy.
But I don't have a watch.
Pamut mentioned. Remind me to remedy that later, Twist said somberly.
Oh, I know what to do.
Rafe said. Then he vanished again. Less than a minute later, he reappeared with another pop, looking rumpled and slightly out of breath. He held up a silver pocket watch with a broken chain, as if it were a trophy.
Here's one.
Where did you get that? Jonas asked, looking at him worriedly.
I stole it off of one of the ciphers I dropped in Copenhagen.
Rafe answered.
They're all very cranky now.
He added as he smoothed his hair back into order. Jonas tried to stop his own laughter, but he ended up just curling in on himself and shaking silently for a moment. While a ridiculous image of a pack of displaced, recently electrocuted and angry ciphers battling with a Kisne pickpocket on some unknown street in the heart of Denmark played into his mind. It took a great deal of will for him to keep his own laughter at bay. Mira only giggled for a moment, while Pamut and his grandfather both seemed to only find Raffe's stunt very odd indeed. Raffe, meanwhile, looked rather pleased with himself to have found an elegant solution. Kima cleared her throat, her own features struggling not to laugh. Thank you, she said to Raffe, who nodded happily in reply. Kima looked to her son. Stay with Raffe until I see you again, all right?
All right.
Pamut said with a decisive nod. Twist asked to see the watch and he busied himself with making sure that it was running in good order and setting the time to exactly match that of his own pocket watch. They decided on a set time of 10 minutes in the future, and then the group parted. Rafe Pamut remained in the spell room while the others followed Kima to a new part of the black metal maze. They found Tasha and Nico, now dressed in sand-colored cipher robes, waiting in the middle of a long hallway. A set of metal stairs against the wall led up to an opening in the ceiling. Bright sunlight fell in through the opening, along with the soft sounds of the outside world. As they approached, Tasha and the others, Twist heard very distant voices. Kima stopped close to Nico while gingerly peering up around the edge of the opening. Twist looked up as well and saw nothing but blue sky above. All of them stood out in the light that fell into the black hallway. Kima suggested they break into 3 small groups so that they might all reach the 3 pins at the arranged time. Twist asked to see Tasha's watch while Kima spoke as she gave it to him. He checked that his time matched the time on his own watch. What about Aiden? Tasha asked.
He was with Loki last time I saw him.
Mira answered.
They were in a tent over there.
She added with a point. Twist repeated her words for the others, keeping his voice low as he handed Tasha's watch back to her. Then Nico and I will see to Aiden, Tasha now softly. We'll wait until the spell breaks and then try to free him while the Saphors are distracted. We need 2 more watches then, Twist said. Should we tell Rafe? Jonas asked with a grin. No, wait, Poigon said, reaching into his own pocket. I have one. Here, I have one too, Nico added, handing his own watch to Twist. Twist swiftly checked the 2 watches and set them, noting that the 10 minutes had already dropped to less than 7. At this news, the others broke into pairs swiftly. Vane instantly declared that he would go with Jonas to 1 pin, Kima and Twist would take another pin, and Kima's father would go alone to the third. Mira offered to go with Jonas to direct him, as Kima and her father already knew the way. Everyone then pulled their hoods up to cover their faces in shadow, finally ready to step into the light. And that is the end of that chapter. We are going to take a break here. And Ashley, the author, is here for the evening. Hello, Erudite, who wrote earlier, Sheesh, the SEO for this channel is but. Had trouble getting here on my PC, but I made it. Well, this is a rather new channel, and I'm pretty sure Twitch does not do a lot to promote small channels. It is what it is. And that is why we use word of mouth primarily, as well as people from the old channel too. That also helps. But Erudite also wrote, everyone needs to start searching for it a bunch and get Google on board. Well, unfortunately, I would not rely on Google for finding this channel. I believe word of mouth would be better. To be perfectly honest, sometimes I think it was a mistake to start a brand new channel instead of just converting the old channel over to reading and writing only. But there's something a little nice of having a fresh new start. Ace, hello Ace. Ace wrote, ooh, what if you put a link here on your old channel, like in the panel? Oh, put a link to here on your old channel. I believe I have a link to this channel in the old channel's description. I will have to double check. I need to take time, which I have not done this week, but I need to take time just to make sure all of my links are current and pointing to the new channel. So if people do go to the old channel or old channels, because I have a YouTube one as well, then they point to the newer channels. And I also need to add a link to where to find my stories as well before if you want to read it or listen to it before they make it over to YouTube. All of this is a work in progress. So I do appreciate everyone's patience as we get things set up. Essentially start over, but honestly, I think for a small channel here on Twitch and YouTube, we're doing pretty well. And here's our tea. I am actually looking forward to trying this tea. It's a new flavor. Oh, it smells nice. Interesting taste. Mm, it's not bad. Not bad. I don't think it'll be replacing any of my favorites anytime soon, but it is still a good one. Mm. Before we continue, I want to thank you all for joining this reading stream, whether you're here live or you're listening to the VOD on Twitch or YouTube. Hope that you're enjoying the story so far, as well as the reading of this story. Once again, I want to reiterate that if you are enjoying the story, or if you think to yourself, boy, I wish I knew what happened before all of this, well, consider supporting the author by buying their books. I promise the stories, I know it takes a while to get through for the reading stream, but they're actually a nice read. Nothing is not heavy at all. They're not very long, as in, they're not thousands of pages. Each book, I believe, I think the most I've seen for a book was 300 and something pages, but as you're reading it, you don't notice the pages flying by. I mean, we're already close to 200 pages in this book, and I felt like I just started it. Going to take actually a sip of water here. Hmm. Okay. Oh, I thought it was on a different page, but no, this is the correct page. Okay. With that, let us go back into our story. Twist could barely see where he was going as he walked with Kima. The hood hung far over his face, making anything beyond the range of his feet a mystery to him. The cloud top looked just the same as it had the last time he'd seen it, like perfectly ordinary, opaque, silvery white mist. Just as before, however, his feet didn't fall straight through the cloud into the abyss below, but only sink as far as they might into soft sand. The dark rooms and corridors hidden inside the cloud were also perfectly invisible to the eye from up here. He and Kima didn't speak as they walked with their best casual calm, for fear of drawing attention, but Twist heard other people talking around them from time to time. Some of the voices spoke English, but others didn't. Some sounded like small groups, while others could be pairs. All of them were the voices of men, and Twist could only assume they were all ciphers or satyrs. He did his best to continue to move as smoothly as a shadow, standing straight even though his instincts told him to run and hide. To his astonishment, however, he and Kima failed to draw any attention at all. Kima paused from time to time, motioning for him to stop or continue, her gestures just low enough that Twist could see them in his limited field of vision. Why the ciphers would employ such a cumbersome costume at all was beyond him. Twist could guess that Kima was having just as much trouble seeing as he was, and so had to pause to check their route from time to time. Every time she did, Twist checked his watch as well, watching the intended moment creep steadily closer. Eventually, Kima gestured for them to stop, standing close beside the slanted wall of an animal hide tent. Kima stood before him, as if they were talking softly together. Twist checked his watch again, finding that they only had a few minutes left. Twist raised a hand to carefully lift the edge of his hood. They were standing at the edge of a ring of tents, broken by occasional alleyways. A wide, tall, circular pin made of tied sticks stood in the center of the ring, leaving only a narrow space to walk around it. The sticks that made up the walls and the closed ceiling of the pen were tied at odd angles to each other, creating open holes everywhere, but none of the holes were large enough for even a child to climb through. Inside the pen, Twist saw a large crowd of village women, each wearing obviously handmade clothing of hide, leather, or simple looking fabrics. He didn't take the time to check, but Twist could guess that each of them shared Kima's features. Twist spied the lock on the outside of the pen, directly across the walkway from where they stood, and then he dropped his hood back down to hang over his face again. Now they only had to wait. Twist counted down half a minute silently in his head, in his mind, apologies. Twist counted down half a minute silently in his mind before checking the time again. His anxiety rose as he and Kima stood still, but he clung desperately to the hope that all of their plans would work. Tasha and Nico had by far the most dangerous job of freeing Aiden from Loki, and Twist tried not to worry about them, though, with Tasha's sight and Nico's weaponry, they were easily the most robust pair. Checking his watch after another moment of silent counting, finally saw the second hand tick to within 30 seconds. Kima must have seen it too. She moved toward the pen. Twist followed beside her and lifted the edge of his hood, risking a glance around at the world. There were no ciphers or satyrs nearby. When Kima stopped before the lock, she whispered hurriedly in her language to the women inside the pen. The women turned alert and curious in an instant, many of them stepping closer and looking around when Twist glanced up at them. Seeing his watch tell him that they only had 10 seconds left, Twist's heart began to pound. 10 seconds, he announced to Kima. Kima tossed back her hood, revealing her face to the women inside the pen, and most of them gasped in surprise at the sight of her. Twist tossed his own hood back as well, now counting aloud to Kima as the next few seconds evaporated. Open it. Ooh, that's the wrong voice. Opened it, Kima said to him, pointing at the lock. Twist stuffed his watch back into his pocket and immediately took the lock into his hands. It was crude and simple to break with Tasha's hairpin. The lock succumbed, and Twist pulled it free, opening the door. The women inside stared at him in wonder, but only for a moment. A low but powerful sound of grumbling thunder rose through the air from afar, and the cloud itself shook under his feet for only an instant. That's it, Kiba told Twist swiftly. They'll follow you. I'll make sure they all get out. Run for the hatch. His own hood already lying forgotten on his back, Twist nodded to her and glanced to the first of the women who were already exiting the pen before he turned and took off at a run. He took a few strides back the way they come, through the tightly packed city of handmade huts and tents, making sure the crowd was following him, before he realized he'd not paid very good attention to their route on the way there. As if answering his prayers, Mira's spirit appeared suddenly at his side, running along with him. Do you know the way? He asked her as they approached a fork in the alleyway. At the speed of their flight, touching him to convey her voice through his sight was impractical, but Mira nodded, smiling. Relief crashed over Twist, making him giddy in all the excitement. Darling, I love you. Mira glanced back to beam at him for an instant before looking back to her path, taking the fork to the left. Twist followed on her heels, his heart pounding along with the remarkably soft sound of the army of feet behind him on the cloud top. They flew down walkways and alleys like a roaring, churning flash flood. Startled ciphers watched them pass and struggled to react, but soon some of them gathered their wits and began to try to stop them. Mira jumped away, frightened, as a fireball struck the cloud at her feet. Twist momentum made stopping harder for him, but he stopped nonetheless when a wall of ciphers appeared in the walkway before them. Worried just as much about the women at his back as the ciphers ahead, he threw himself to the side. The crowd swept past him with enthusiastic voices and raised fists. Twist had no idea where they come from, but metal-tipped spears, knives, and harpoon guns appeared in the hands of the villagers as well. The ciphers only held their ground for a moment before they were overcome. Come on! Kiba shouted at Twist, following behind with the rest of her people, a loaded harpoon gun in her hands as well. Right, Twist replied with conviction. He joined her at the rear of the group, which now seemed happy to lead itself. After all, Twist realized, it was their village. A sudden explosion some distance to the side startled everyone, but their pace didn't slow. Twist saw a huge plume of smoke rise over the tops of the tents and huts around them, followed swiftly by another with another blast. The rooks are attacking, Mira gasped, touching Twist's back just long enough to speak. Kima shouted something to her people, and the pace of the crowd rose to a reckless speed. Twist's lungs started to complain against his effort, but soon the crowd slowed again. He pulled to a stop, as the crowd did suddenly. A new huge crowd of villagers appeared out of another alleyway to meet them. Twist thought he spotted Kima's father among them, but he vanished into the throng. Despite the amazing number of people in front of him, Twist noticed the crowd began to thin inexplicably. Sense caught up with him, suggesting that they must be funneling down through the hatch and into the black hallways inside the cloud. The distinctive sound of crackling electricity roared from another direction. Twist turned to see Tasha running toward him, dragging someone along with her who was so haggard and pale, having to lean an arm across Tasha's shoulders for support, that Twist hardly recognized Aiden at all. Nico followed behind them, shooting waves of lightning at the ciphers on their heels. Some fell, but more appeared to replace them. Loki's after us, Tasha shouted at Twist and Kima. Kima snapped out a rude word that Twist had only ever heard on Jonas's lips, and turned to level her aim at the approaching horde of ciphers. Twist stood still, more unsure of what he ought to do than he'd ever been before. A third river of villagers had come to join those behind him, and now only they and a few more remained on the cloud top. All the rest were below. There were far too many human beings climbing down the hole for Twist to even consider joining them. He was trapped above until the way was clear. Tasha rushed past Twist and Kima with Aiden, but Nico stopped and continued to fling his electricity at the ciphers. Now they too were stopped, a ways back from Twist and the others. As Nico threw another blast of lightning at them, Twist saw that it faded, striking things in its path before it reached the ciphers. Satyrs appeared out of the crowd of ciphers, each holding up glowing transparent shields of energy that deflected what little electricity reached them. Nico dropped his hands, breathing hard. Kima held her aim firm, fear flashing in her eyes. Mira took Twist's hand in hers, the chill of her skin only one of the reasons he shuddered. As Twist watched, stunned and horrified, Lord Loki stepped clear of his men, striding forward slowly with the satyrs, safe behind their shields. He was tall and pale, and the world fell to silence around him. His eyes were covered with white lensed golden goggles, and almost the entire left half of his face was wrapped in thin, molded plates of gold that clung like a second skin down past his jaw and under his collar. While his right hand was human and casually held a pistol, his left hand, visible past the cuff of his cloak, was made of open, shining golden bars of metal in a skeletal design.
I see Twist.
He announced to the satyrs, taking aim at him. Mira gasped, clinging to Twist's arm.
Kill him!
What many of the satyrs snapped at once.
Kill them both!
One called.
But not at the same time.
Another snapped swiftly. Mira pulled Twist back, while his frightened mind came up with no useful actions at all. Nico tried again to bathe the attackers in lightning. The electricity bounced off the satyr's shield, striking everything but its target, but it did make Loki flinch for an instant and lose his aim on Twist. Twist stared back at Loki's white lensed, eyeless gaze as the world seemed to stand still while the man's aim found to begin. No! Jonah's voice shot through the world as he appeared at Twist's side and rushed to stand before him. You killed Twist over my dead body!
All right,
Loki said casually. Twist reached out to shove Jonas out of the way, but before his hands reached him, the air cracked with thunder. Jonas's form jerked and then slipped down to one knee, his hands clutching at his abdomen. The world itself fell out from under Twist, dropping him into cold, spinning horror. He heard Kima cry out in rage, and hardly noticed as her harpoon flew from her gun and struck Loki in the middle of his chest, throwing him back off his feet and into the ciphers behind him. Pamut appeared out of nowhere. He stood before them all and clasped his hands together as the cloud around him rose up and his entire form started to glow. An enormous crack blasted through the air, and the satyrs flew back off their hooves as if a case of dynamite had just exploded in their faces, but none of the human beings moved an inch. Nico immediately resumed his attack, striking the ciphers easily now, and Kima joined him to fight them all back with nothing but horror and rage. Twist couldn't stop staring at Jonas's hunched form, kneeling on the cloud in front of him. This was impossible. This couldn't happen. Jonas had to live. He had to be fine, with Kima and Pamut and his own daughter in a garden on a beautiful day in the future. He couldn't be shot. Staring at him, Twist realized that the buzzing in his neck was dim, as if Jonah was already far away. Why hadn't Twist gotten a glimpse of this hideous future? Why couldn't he go back and save Jonas? Nothing made sense. Pummut was still standing still and staring at Jonas with tearful horror while the fighting raged behind him. Mira was trying to talk to Twist, but he couldn't hear it. The world could not go on until this stopped happening. Vane! Sorry. Vane! Jonas's voice called from behind Twist. Startled, finally into action, Twist whirled around to find Jonas rushing past him to meet the kneeling Jonas on the cloud top. Jonas crouched down beside his other self and pulled himself back into his own arms. The Jonas who'd been shot blurred over with a dark shadow, and then recoalesced into Vane. Jonas pressed his hand over the bleeding wound in Vane's side. Twist's legs failed him, and he dropped to his knees on the cloud top as misery and relief both crashed down on his weakened nerves. You idiot! Jonas bellowed, his own terror splashing through the buzzing at Twist's neck. Who told you to do that? What were you thinking?
He was going to shoot Twist,
Vane replied, his voice strained.
I knew he'd shoot me if I looked like you.
Yeah, and now you're shot, Jonas growled.
Wait, that wasn't you?
Raffaele asked Jonas, appearing out of the crowd behind Jonas to stare down at them both in horror.
Oh, Vane, sweetie,
he moaned, rushing in to crouch down on the other side of Vane.
I'm immortal,
Vane muttered through gritted teeth. But you're not invincible, Jonas grumbled, his false anger giving way to real relief. You can still be killed. Vane looked up at him, his skin going ashen, but his smile wide and warm.
You care? You really care, Johnny?
You bastard, Jonas tried to say, but his voice broke and a tear escaped his eye before the words were finally formed. Let me see him. Wrong voice. Let me see him, Kima's father said, joining them suddenly. Twist looked around to find that the ciphers had been forced back by the villagers, who were now gone, likely safe inside the cloud or already aboard the Icarus. And Kima, Nico, and Pamut now stood around them, watching Vane and Jonas with stunned expressions. Pamut in particular looked just as wrecked by his emotions as Twist felt, the boy wiping absently at his tears on his damp face, now showing nothing but relief. Kima still appeared horrified, staring silently at Jonas. The sounds of fighting in the distance surrounded the village as the last of the ciphers tried to hold out against the full force of the invading Rook fleet. Let's get him to your ship, Poigon said to Jonas and Raffaele. It's the only safe place. Here we are at a chapter break. Oh, okay. I see why my phone started messaging me so much. Nevertheless, I hope that you are enjoying this reading stream as well as the story. And again, if you do like the story, if you want to know more or read more about it, consider supporting the author Emily Thompson and read her works. I do apologize as well towards the end of that chapter. For some reason, I do not know why, my brain just decided to start dozing off. I'm assuming it's been something of a long week. Oh, that is good though. Again, not my top favorite. Well, actually, no, this is pretty good. Now that it cooled down some more, I think I could taste more of the flavors. So, what tea am I drinking? Well, I am drinking a sampler, actually. This is a sample that came in with my last order. It is called Nose in a Book, which is inspired by a Disney princess. Guess which one? Nose in a Book, and which feels very appropriate as we're reading a book here. But the ingredients for this tea: black tea, apple, marigold, rose petal, natural vanilla flavoring. And in fact, I'm going to take another sip here. Mm, sure. Because I am a perfect mind reader, you're probably wondering, Taka, where did you find tea that sounds this delicious? I want to try tea that's black tea, marigold, apple, rose petal, natural vanilla flavoring. Or, ooh, or maybe I want to try something a little wilder. Do you have any recommendations for that? Well, my dear listener, allow me to tell you about a place. A special place, a magical place, since we are reading a book about magic, a magical place that I know will have a tea that will absolutely tickle your fancies. A tea shop in the Pacific Northwest, a tea shop that has been in business for quite some time now, at least 4 to 5 years. A tea shop known as not Seattle, Washington, is in Seattle, Washington. It is called Friday Afternoon, the tea shop in Seattle, Washington. That is right. It is time for our not sponsored. I promise it's not a sponsorship, even though it seems like a sponsorship. I got no money for this because it's not a sponsorship, not a sponsorship. Maybe it's a sponsorship, not a sponsorship. From Friday Afternoon, the tea shop in Seattle, Washington. I almost went out of breath there. If you go to the website, www.fridaytea.com, you will find a wide variety of teas that I know will tickle your fancies. Tonight, I want to tell you about the tea not might and berry. Wow. I am having pocket dyslexia. I want to tell you about the tea Merry and Bright, and that's how you know that this is not a pre-recording. Merry and Bright is the tea. It is part of the winter seasonal rotation, so that means it will be available from now until March 3rd. So if this tea sounds delicious to you, consider putting in an order for it before March 3rd. And this tea description goes as follows. Debuting on day 25 of our fair oh wow, I cannot read. Debuting on day 25 of our first ever tea advent calendar. This coquettish coquito inspired tea has all of the cinnamon bun aroma of a Christmas cocktail and all the boozy notes to boot. Ingredients: white tea, cinnamon, allspice, toffee, natural vanilla, and brandy flavoring, vanilla oil. Wow, there's actually brandy in there. And for the toffee, because there's an asterisk here, the toffee contains sugar, vegetable oil, which is palm oil and sunflower oil there. It also contains dairy butter, almonds, 2% or less of salt, lecithin, which is soy, it seems, and chocolate. That's if you want to know what the toffee is made out of. I know some people may potentially be vegan, so dairy butter may not be their cup of tea, in this case, literally. Or some people may be allergic to almonds, let's say. So, this just let you know that is what is in the toffee. But again, this actually sounds pretty delicious, and it is available until March 3rd for ordering. And it has 5 out of 5 reviews. There are only 2 reviews. The first review from last year, 2025, yet another perfect cup. And by last year, I mean January 2025. Yet another perfect cup. Bright and sweet, this tea makes me unimaginably happy. And another review, also from January of last year, 2025. Excellent tea. I loved every tea you all make, and this one is no different. There you have it. More satisfied customers from Friday afternoon to tea shop in Seattle, Washington. And again, you can find these teas and more, including some of my favorites like Anansi's Web, at www.fridaytea.com. Again, the website is www.fridaytea.com. And again, they do not pay me to do this. They may be aware that I'm doing this still. They may say, "Why are you still doing this? It's been 4 years." Well, because I enjoy their teas. In fact, I'm going to take another sip. Okay, that was more than a sip. Mm. Oh, that is good. I know I say that a lot for the teas that I drink here, but my goodness. I will also say this. Before doing the reading stream, before trying Friday afternoon tea, I was not much of a tea drinker. I did drink tea, don't get me wrong. I did drink tea, but as far as something besides, sencha or not so much matcha, I didn't really like matcha, but sencha, black tea, that kind of thing. Friday afternoon introduced me to oh, sorry. Friday afternoon introduced me to teas with spices in it, which I thought I would not like at first, but one of those teas is probably second favorite tea. The peach tea, like I've had peach tea before, but the Fairy Queen, which I know I talk about every now and then on the channel, I still say that tea is criminally delicious. I don't know why it's allowed to be in circulation, but I am not going to complain. Well, honestly, all the teas I've had from Friday afternoon that do not contain chocolate because I'm not a chocolate person. Well, that sounds weird. I do not necessarily enjoy chocolate like everyone else does. I'll put it that way. So typically, I won't drink the teas that have chocolate in it. It's just, well, not my cup of tea. But the other teas I've tried from them, even if I thought, I don't know if I'm going to like it, I still found them pleasant, if not downright enjoyable. Mm. And again, as far as the sponsorship, no, they actually do not sponsor me. Anyone who may be wondering, why do you keep saying they're not a sponsorship, but they're definitely not a sponsorship, and you just go on and on? One, it's fun to do. Two, it's because they really do not sponsor me. I just talk about their teas whenever I can, or in a bit of a stream anyway. All that to say, if you want to try some different teas, try Friday afternoon. I want to take the time also to thank you all for joining the stream so far. Hope you are enjoying the stream as well as the reading of this story. And again, if you do like the story and you want to know more about the story itself, maybe you were not with us for the first 10 books of the series, consider supporting the author by going out to buy their books. Their books are relatively inexpensive, to be perfectly honest. If you happen to play games, like, the books are definitely less than a video game for sure. For the most part, anyway. And if you, dear listener, have any works that you would like to have read on the reading stream, or you know someone who writes stories and you think, maybe it'd be nice to hear the Takanome read their stories out loud for the world to hear, well, send me a message either through Twitch or Blue Sky or YouTube. Ooh, okay, we did not knock that over. I was looking at my computer here. I noticed that my web camera is turned on. I wondered, why is my web camera turned on? And then I remember that I added a source for the web camera for Thursday's stream. Which, by the way, if you were not able to see Thursday's stream, I believe the VOD is still up both on Twitch and YouTube. But honestly, I had fun doing Thursday stream. Being able to write a story live for people to watch or comment on and so forth. And I have to say, I really do enjoy I'm enjoying the little series that I'm creating surrounding the character Agatha Spells. Really looking forward to the next one. But I believe we have at least another, let's see, we have at least another chapter in us for tonight. Let's see if we could get two. We'll go based on energy levels here. But oh, before we start, Erudite wrote, right. Had a migraine that day and couldn't join. You doing it again next week? Yes, I will be doing this again next week. The Storycraft stream, which is the name I'm going with for now, will be Thursdays at 6 Eastern, 5 Central. I had to remember the time I started because I have to get used to a new schedule. Nevertheless, next Thursday, we will have the Storycraft stream again, where we are going to write another story for the unfortunate souls who met Agatha Spells. That is the story title we're going with so far. No clue what the book cover will look like, but at the moment, that's the title for the future book, and we're writing it on stream. So I'm having fun with that. One moment, taking another drink of water here. Mm. Okie dokie. I think we are ready for our next chapter. So, with that, let's begin. Some of the armed villagers stood guard inside the cloud, just under the hatch, in case any of the ciphers decided to try to get away from the rooks that way. Vane was taken to the deck of the Icarus, but Kima's father, being the healer of his village, did his best to help him. Refe used his magical abilities to pop into Polygon's tent and retrieve his medical tools in an instant, and then remain close to help however else he could. Aiden sat to one side of the deck while Tasha struggled to bring him to his senses. From his own experience with ciphers, Twist suspected that Aiden was a victim of their sight-enhancing drug. Until the drug relinquished its hold on him, Aiden would be nothing better than pliant. The sound of fighting still raged above them, and Twist could see the airships around the village firing from all sides, but Twist knew that only the ciphers, satyrs, and rooks were involved now. A good number of villagers stood crowded together to nearly cover the Icarus's entire deck, all listening quietly to the battle above them. None of the violence reached the Icarus nestled up against the underside of the cloud. Jonas sat heavily on a crate at the edge of the deck, watching Vane, Rafe, and Polygon from afar through a walkway-like gap in the crowd. Twist stood beside him, watching silently as Jonas noticed that his clothes and hands were stained with Vane's blood. Damn fool, Jonas muttered to himself. Twist stared at his friend for a moment longer, his thoughts still wrapped tightly around the recent horrors. I thought he was you. Jonas looked up to him, his eyes a colorless, cold gray. He wasn't. Twist sighed. His thoughts still refused to unwind. Here, sweetheart, Mira said, now wearing her clockwork puppet again as she approached Jonas with the cloth and a bowl of water. You're all bloody. Thanks, puppet. Jonas said on a sigh. He began to wash his hands and wipe at the blood on his clothing that hadn't dried yet. Mira watched him silently for a moment before her emotions overtook her. She let out an unhappy sound and wrapped her arms around Jonas, giving him a hearty squeeze. Twist considered joining her, but refrained for propriety's sake.
I'm so glad you're all right.
She said into Jonas's collar. There, Poppet, Jonas said, patting at her back as he let her hold him without complaint. I'm indestructible, remember?
I know.
Mira said as she pulled back to give him a sad smile.
But Twist and I really would be all right if, you know.
You're both a right pair of softies, Jonas replied smugly.
Oh, you.
Mira grumbled half-heartedly, giving his shoulder a light shove. Jonas seemed pleased with this treatment and gave up trying to get the dry blood out of his shirt. He placed the towel down on the edge of the bowl and glanced back at Vane across the deck. Twist felt a wave of cold in the buzzing at his neck wash away the warmth that Mira's embrace had given to Jonas's spirit. Mira took Jonas's hand.
At least he's not human.
Oh, excuse me there.
At least he's not really human. That should help, shouldn't it?
She asked. Yeah, it should, Jonas agreed.
Jonas!
Papa's voice called out as the boy ran toward him out of the crowd. Kima followed behind her son. Twist had lost track of the two of them in the fray and assumed that they must have gotten caught in the crowd and only just returned to the airship. Twist had only managed to make it safely to the Icarus because a way had to be clear for Vane, but he did remember that it closed up tight behind him. I'm right here, Jonas replied, standing to meet the boy. There's no need to shout. Pamut didn't slow as he came closer. Instead, he threw himself at Jonas, his face buried in Jonas's chest and both arms wrapped tightly around his waist. The blow made Jonas grunt slightly, but then he chuckled, rubbing at the boy's back. If this keeps up, I'll get a fat head, he remarked with a smirk.
I thought you were shot.
Pabut declared, looking up at him. I wasn't, Jonas replied. Vane was. Am I the only one not relieved that Vane was shot? He asked them all accusingly.
Vane's not you.
Pambut answered, shaking his head. He released his hold on Jonas but remained close beside him.
I mean, he's nice and all, but he's not you.
Jonas patted the boy's shoulder and gave a sigh. And if you lot keep saying things like that, I'm going to run out of pithy comments.
What's pithy mean?
Pambut asked Mira. Mira laughed into a hand and shook her head.
I'll tell you later.
Kimo was standing in front of Jonas, just a step or two away, staring at him with enough weight to drag them both to the center of the earth. Seeming to sense the tension in the air between them, Pambut backed away to one side, watching his mother with anxiety. Jonas went tense and quiet, his eyes obviously having trouble finding a place to land. He leaned back against the crate and forced himself into a somewhat cavalier position. Let me guess, he said to her, his tone not as light as he might have liked. You thought I was shot. Kiba didn't reply, but instead moved closer. A look of fright flashed through both Jonas's expression and the buzzing at Twist's neck, as Jonas raised his hands instinctively, obviously expecting an attack. But Kima offered no violence. Instead, she slipped past his startled defense and wrapped her arms around him, her face half hidden but glistening with tears as she held him tightly. Jonas's hands fell to her back, while confusion and concern pulsed through the buzzing at Twist's neck. Kima? He asked gently. I'm an idiot, she replied, still clinging to him. No, you're not, Jonas countered. Yes, I am, Kima insisted, pulling back but not moving far away. Her damp gaze fell down away from Jonas's, and she wiped at her eyes with one hand, leaving the other still on Jonas's shoulder. I made a stupid mistake, she went on, pulling courage seemingly out of thin air. I let fear make me stupid. I hurt you. And then I thought I lost you. Oh, for heaven's sake, Jonas began, rolling his eyes. No, please, let me say this, she said, gentle but earnest. Kima looked at him, but now avoided his eyes. She touched the edge of his face tenderly, stilling Jonas instantly and sending a blush of curious warmth through the buzzing at Twist's neck. Jonas's gaze dropped toward her hand, letting her look at him freely. I didn't mean anything I said before, she said to Jonas. I'd take it all back if I could. I don't want to be alone. I want us to be close again. Twist realized he was grinning smugly and tried to stop. Though her words had paused, her expression suggested she wanted to say more. Her hand lingered at the edge of Jonas's jaw, and the buzzing at Twist's neck was still growing warmer. New suspicions grew in Twist's thoughts as, for once, it was clear that a pithy comment was the furthest thing from Jonas's mind. Pumut and Mira both seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for Kima to go on or Jonas to answer. Kima gave a sigh, seeming to give up some internal battle. I'm sorry. Can we go back to how things were before? Can you forgive me for being an idiot? She gave the edge of his jaw a soft, almost playful pet with her thumb. Can we try again? Jonas paused for a moment more. Twist could only imagine the storm of thoughts raging in his head. Somehow, Jonas managed to find a wry smile and put it on. He reached up and took her hand, placing a kiss on her palm. Kima's gaze locked onto her hand as a ripple of surprise seemed to waft over her at the gesture, giving Jonas the chance to look up at her with his naked gaze. It'll take a lot more than one little spat to shake me off, love, he replied with the confidence of a true scoundrel. I forgave you hours ago. Can you forgive me for being selfish and not listening to you? He asked, his tone losing every protective air and turning honest. Kima's whole form softened with a relieved breath and her face took on a warm smile. Without any warning, that Twist could see, she moved even closer, taking Jonas's neck in one hand and pulling him into a sudden kiss. Twist's vision swam and his balance faltered as the buzzing at his neck exploded with rich, hot, heady delight and surprise. Mira's cool copper hands caught hold of him, spilling her own scandalous glee into his sight. Focusing on Mira, however, made it easier for Twist to regain his composure. When he managed to focus on Mira's face, it was beaming with a guilty smile. Jonas's emotions smoothed out a moment later, and Twist glanced back at him. Kima lingered before Jonas, her forehead resting against his. Jonas lazily placed both hands around her waist, his posture showing no sign at all that he wasn't enjoying her continued proximity. Seeming to follow his lead, she linked her own fingers behind his neck and pulled back enough to look at him. Twist was most amazed at even such close quarters. They both appeared to avoid each other's gaze quite easily. It almost looked practiced and comfortable. So, do you forgive me then? Jonas asked, his tone purring. Kima's smile turned into a smirk. This time. Twist was startled to hear a taunting note on her voice so suddenly, but Jonas grinned broadly at it, the buzz in Twist's neck going as warm as sunlight. Twist braced instinctively, but this time Jonas's emotions weren't as violent. Jonas nodded, seeming to sober himself up quickly. I'll never fight you over your son again, Jonas declared with new honesty and gravity. I never should have. I'm sorry I did. Kima nodded, looking as if she deeply appreciated his apology.
So,
Pamut said softly.
you're not mad at each other anymore?
Kiba stared, stepping away from Jonas and taking her hands back while her cheeks took on a pinkish bloom. Jonas started giggling silently into his fist, clearly struggling to hold his laughter in. Kima shot him a glare and forced herself under control. Twist was surprised to find a sly looking grin on Pumut's face as he watched Jonas and his mother. No, we're not, Kima declared, her voice smooth now. She moved away from Jonas to stand beside Pabut, one arm across his shoulders. Everything's fine now, she added to her son, who smiled back with obvious relief. Then Kima paused and glanced back toward Jonas. I really do want to take it all back. You were right, Jonas. He was ready for this. You saw that when I was too frightened to. Pamut's face lit up with pride to hear this, while, to his credit, Jonas refrained from appearing at all smug. You're his mom, Jonas said with a shrug. Mums have a God given right to worry. Pamut frowned at this, clearly not agreeing. He needs more than just a worried mother, Kima countered, her tone smooth but cautious. I guess that one parent really isn't enough. While Pamut didn't seem to fully follow her implications, Jonas clearly did. Twist felt Jonas's spirit chill and saw his cobalt eyes pale to a nearly colorless frosted green, while his expression suggested that someone had just lended him the fate of all mankind and told him not to drop it. Mura's clockwork hand rose to cover her soundless gasp. Kima took Jonas's reaction with her own anxiety and jerked slightly when an approaching figure caught her attention. Kiba's father walked closer, wiping his hands on his cloth. How is Vane? Jonas asked him, his manner somewhat businesslike and serious, even though his spirit still pulsed with chaos. He's strong, Poigon replied. That wound would have killed a normal man, but the bleeding stopped very fast, and he's already healing. I think he will be all right. Jonas took the news with great relief. Thank you, he said. That's wonderful to hear. Can I talk to him? Poigon nodded vaguely. Thanks, Jonas said. He glanced toward Kima. I'll be right back. Without waiting for any sort of reply, he hurried off as if there were a fire to be put out. Twist held his breath to stop himself from snickering at this hasty exit. Kima looked very concerned as she watched Jonas leave, but Twist suspected that her concern for Vane was minimum at best. Thank you for helping Vane, Mira said earnestly to Poigon. He nodded in reply. Your friend was the most hurt, but I should go see to the others now, he said, turning to leave. Such a nice man, Mira said to Kima, smiling at her with a brilliant light in her jewel eyes. And by the way, she added, speaking now as if she were imparting a secret, I think you only startled Jonas. He'll be fine. Right, dear? She asked, glancing to Twist. Kima looked to Twist too, her anxiety clear as day. Twist couldn't help but smile back to Kima. Well, he's not going to refuse. Are you sure? Kima asked back swiftly. Absolutely, Twist assured her with perfect confidence. She nodded and took a deep breath, apparently trying to accept this. Refuse what? Pambud asked. What's going on? Kima patted at his shoulder and gave a sigh. Don't worry, Doa. Everything is fine now. Pamut didn't seem to think this at all adequate, but he also likely assumed that she would say no more even if he asked. Okay, in that case, I believe this will be our stopping point for the evening. Ooh. I can certainly feel it in my feet. Nevertheless, everyone, thank you for joining this reading stream. I hope that you enjoy the story as well as the reading of the story. Again, consider giving the author your support either by reading more of their works or following them any way that you can support the author. A reminder, we do have a new program on this channel called the Storycraft Stream that will be airing on Thursdays starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central. It's still a little bit of a work in progress, but I think we have a method to the madness now. And again, I do want to thank you all for the support that you give these channels, whether they are likes or follows. Well, not subscriptions because we don't have that ability yet. If you spread the word, tell friends and family about the channel. If you just like to listen in the background, listen to the VOD, any way that you support these channels, I do very much appreciate it. So thank you. And with that, I believe that will be all. Until next time, take care, be safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.